Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, and I'm going to be talking about Green Frontier, Episode 1. It's called The Deep Jungle. I'll start spoiler free because it is a first episode. This is Netflix, and it's a Netflix original. Their newest or first Colombian original, I believe, but it's in Spanish. It's a foreign show, so you should be aware of that. And like all of Netflix's foreign shows, gets no publicity if you're not in the country it's originated from. And obviously, Mindhunter's up to date. Don't worry, me and Connor are reviewing that later. But I want to try to check out more of these pilots that go up and see if they're worth checking out, worth watching, and give you guys just a bit of a spotlight on some of these smaller things that you might not see otherwise. Green Frontier is a crime thriller with a supernatural bent. It is about this cop named Helena who teams up with a local to go into the Amazon because there's been a mysterious batch of murders. These missionaries are all being killed, and they're going in to check things out. But there's also this story taking place further back in the past with these indigenous tribes that is a bit more spiritual, a bit more supernatural. And I'll save most of that for spoilers, but there is elements of that there. There's definitely something else going on, and something I assume the show, as it goes on, will delve into and sort of tie the two plots together. But I mean, I think if I'm just giving general impressions of this first episode, is that it's not bad. It's not amazing by any means. There's definitely some elements that feel a little undercooked. I think the biggest thing that it's got going for it is actually the location. It's it's shot on location. I don't know if it's exactly where they're saying it is, but it doesn't really matter because the rivers, the forests, everything looks great. There's a couple of shots early on of like just riding a boat in the river, and it's just these big sweeping, I don't know if they've got drones or they've got helicopter shots, whatever it is. In fact, bizarrely, the opening shot of the jungle made me think a little bit of Predator, and then there was a scene quite quickly after that where a character arrived on a helicopter. Now, it's not actually anything like Predator in any way, shape, or form. There's just a couple of little things that made me think of Predator, and it's just funny that it happened a couple of times. And then there's one other big thing, actually, I'll get to in spoilers about that. But no, I mean the first episode is pretty reasonable. I was actually quite into it for the first maybe 10-15 minutes because the visuals were so nice, and it was nice that it was kind of slowly building into what it was doing. It kind of slowed down a bit for me though, and I sort of fell away from it in the back half of the episode. It felt like it was less coherent in the back half of the episode, and it felt like it was doing weirder things, which it's meant to, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't feel as tight as maybe it did at the start of the episode. And the characters aren't particularly interesting. The one thing that they've got really going for it in that dynamic early on is that Helena, who's the main character, is kind of an outsider, and the locals kind of take advantage of her quite quickly, and the other police officers who are local to the area kind of mock her and don't think think she's being too serious. She shows up to the crime scene and she's got her white overalls on because she's trying to be do DNA and forensics and shit like that and not contaminate the scene, and the other cops just laugh at her like, we don't do that here. And so you've got that dynamic going on, but other than that, there's not a whole lot going on with the characters outside of like hints at their backstory, because both her and kind of her main partner Ronaldo, who's the local cop that she kind of befriends the most. I would say befriends. She's working with the most. They both have ties in their past to some of these tribes in one way or another, and that's kind of hinted at throughout the episode. But for the most part, the first episode is very straightforward, and it's very much, okay, journey into the Amazon, journey to where the bodies are, look at the crime scene, run into one of the local tribes. And it's basically just about the choice of like because they technically don't have jurisdiction out here. The tribes are supposed to be in charge in this area, and they basically have to decide if they're going to overrule something because they want to make sure they investigate the case properly. And that's kind of the crux of the whole first episode. And ultimately, other than that, after they get back to the mainland, it's basically just a case of doing some teasing for some backstories and how it ties into the current plot. It gives us an idea of the main character's like sort of backstory, this sort of like tragic element of her past. But otherwise, that is it. That is the first episode. There's other than the other plot that takes place in the past with the tribes, which I'm kind of staying away from in the spoiler free section, just because I feel it is the most spoilery element of the episode, and it's and it's got its moments, and there's a fly in here, which is annoying me. But it does have its moments. There's actually one scene in particular in the tribe story that is very beautiful and reminded me of a scene in season 1 of the OA of all things, just with how colourful and sort of magical it looked, and yeah, and that was the most intriguing thing in the episode for me. But honestly, the best thing going for it is just the wonderful locations and actually shooting in these places. It has this high quality documentary look to it almost at times, and it feels impressive to be in these locations. But the plot so far is just kind of okay. Like, it's setting up what it's doing. It does kind of feel like it might have that really relaxed Netflix pacing that some shows suffer from on Netflix, where it feels like they're in no rush to get through elements of the plot. And well, sometimes that can be okay. And for the first half of this episode, I actually was fine because it felt like a slow lead into what it was doing. But I do have to admit that the back half of the episode did drag a little bit more for me, which is a shame. So that would be my kind of spoiler-free thoughts on it. I mean, am I going to watch more of it? I mean, the thing is, I'm going to try and make a point of doing more of these pilots for Netflix. On my own. I can't commit to all of them, and ultimately I don't think there's enough in this one to really make me want to watch the rest, but it wasn't bad by any means, and I would be intrigued if any of you guys do stick with it to tell me like how the rest of it shapes up. There's 8 episodes, they're mostly in the mid 40 minutes range. I think the last one's like 30 minutes, but the rest of them are all in about the 40 something range. So I'd be curious to hear what other people think of it if they stick with it. As it is, like, I mean, it's a fine first episode. I've certainly seen much worse from Netflix, and there's a couple of big positives going for it. But if I'm going to give the spoiler warning, so I can just talk about some other things, and I don't think there's anything here that's super spoilery. I feel like if you want to go in blind, this is the time to opt out. If you don't mind knowing a few things that are kind of set up to the show and what the show's about, you're probably worth sticking around. And that is mainly from the story that's in the flashbacks with the tribe. And it feels like they're tied to the murders in some way, whether or not they're responsible or they're just fighting the same thing that is responsible. Because we hear this thing about a ghost tribe the whole time, and we're kind of playing with who are the good guys, who are the bad guys here. But I believe the character's name is Yua. That's Yua, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and if I'm getting the right character here in the list. But he's kind of the main character in this tribe that we're following in this backstory, and there's people in masks with guns who have shown up. So it's not like super far in the past. It could be decades and decades, but there are guns, and I get the impression actually it might be a couple of generations. I feel like this might be like grandparents to kind of the generation we're watching in the present day story. But we learn a couple of neat things. We see that when they're being chased by this other vicious sort of. I mean, I actually thought they were going to be white people, just because I got the impression this was like white people coming to like mess everything up with their guns and whatnot. I was getting that kind of vibe. They weren't though. When we actually got to see them, they weren't. But that was the vibe I was getting from. But they're wearing these like creepy masks actually. These kind of tribal masks, which is funny because they otherwise have normal clothes on. They have regular shirts and trousers or pants on, but they have these sort of tribal masks on over the top of their faces. So that created an interesting visual. Maybe almost the idea of perversing their own culture and saying, no, we can take part of this if we want, even though we're not really involved in it. But we learn that the tribe has this ability, or at least Yua has this ability, where he touches the ground. And it makes him and everyone he's with, because they're kind of all on the run, and he's got his family and tribe around him, it makes them all invisible. And we don't get like a visual effect here. We don't get like them turning to nothing. We don't get like ripples like Predator, which is the other thing that made me think of Predator. I just laughed a little bit because I was already thinking of Predator, and then they had a camouflage technique. But it's just that simple thing where the other characters come in and they don't see them, even though we can see them, and then it cuts to their perspective and they're not there. It's just very simple, probably the way it should have been shot, because it didn't feel goofy at all. It just kind of felt like, oh, okay, they've got abilities, or they can connect to the earth and the earth will hide them. It was making me think of the Green from Swamp Thing or something like that. Which actually kind of comes into a little bit later, because later on we see he's on his own, and if either his tribe he's separated to try and help them, or they're all dead, but he ends up on his own and he's confronted by these gunmen and runs, and eventually he does get away for a little bit. The gunman says that they're now in charge of the area or something to that effect, but he runs away and eventually lies down on the ground, and kind of it's like he connects to the Green, or goes to like the astral plane or something like that, where he goes to And this is the scene that reminded me of the OA season one. If you remember, there's a scene in the OA where she meets like an old woman in like this mystical kind of dimension. It was very much like that. It's deep black background, but all these sparkly kind of lights around him and the other person. And it's this woman that he knows. His I don't know if it's his girlfriend or wife or whatever, but she basically says, I'm partly to blame for you not being in tune with who you are, and you have to learn who you are again to fight these enemies, and like you're going to have to do that. So it feels like he is going to be fighting this battle against this enemy, and while because I think the obvious red herring here is that because he can disappear and the policemen talk about this ghost tribe that no one ever sees, that he and whatever tribe he still has are going to end up being the culprits. But at the same time, it feels like in the past he's been geared up to kind of be the protector of the land. And it can still twist this to say that he did kill these people, but no, it's intriguing in that sense, because I think the characters of the present day stuff are kind of dull so far, and this element of it is definitely a lot more interesting. Even if I don't think the characters in this plot are super defined yet either. It almost feels like they wanted to hit the ground running, so they didn't want to spend any time with Yua beyond just one or two quick setup scenes, and we're already getting this kind of moment where he's getting this message from beyond the grave or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I mean that was basically that plot, and that had the most interesting stuff in it for sure. The end of the other stuff, where like I said, there's a lot of mistrust between Helena and the cops, where they're kind of making fun of her, they're belittling her. There's sexism going on. The first thing that even Ronaldo says to her is, "Oh, we're not used to a woman being sent from the agency," and and they're all very kind of dour characters in a lot of ways. I mean, the guys crack some jokes, but they're kind of just scumbags, and they eventually find this other body in the forest, in the jungle. They find this tribal woman who's had her heart cut out in a very kind of ceremonial way, kind of strung up, but there's no blood, so it's like her blood was drained before their heart was taken out. So they want to solve this case now as well. Is this connected to the other dead bodies? And the local tribe actually happens to be related to Ronaldo. Ronaldo's from this local tribe, even though he's part of the more, what's the correct word? The more developed world, if you will. And so he's able to talk to them, and it's like there's all these rules, they can't take their guns in, and so on and so on. But ultimately, they contact the tribe, because this woman didn't belong to them. This woman was part of another tribe. And they call in this neighbouring tribe, and they want to burn her body, because to them, that's a big thing that you have to do. You have to sort of send her off. And Helena's like, no, we can't burn the body. We have to solve this crime. We need the body to help solve this murder. We're not just going to let this go. And the tribe wants nothing to do with it. And it's actually Ronaldo who pulls out a spare gun that he had hidden, and kind of forces forces their hand and says, no, we're taking the body, you're not doing this. And they disown him for it. They say he'll never be welcome back here again. And yeah, so they take the body. So it's this, they've already got themselves in hot water with the local tribes who were being friendly with them, and it's made them kind of this antagonist to them, even though they're trying to solve murders that are happening in their area. So you've got this kind of mix of intentions and emotions playing off of each other here, which is kind of nice. And the last few scenes of the episode is just kind of Helena getting drunk and being miserable in the shower, and there's hints that she has a past here. Someone says she looked like someone earlier on, and then we see her looking at a journal that her grandparent or parent clearly wrote for her. And the final scene of the episode is she goes out to this area nearby where she's staying, and there's a burned down house, and we get kind of a flashback of her as a little girl being saved by presumably a family member who looks like she's in tribal paint, and she came from a tribe here, and her family seemed to burn in a house, it burned to the ground. So or certainly not her mother or sister here, whoever this is who saved her. But so yeah, it ties her back into what's going on as well. she's someone who's very clearly kind of like left very young and doesn't want to be back and didn't want to be a part of this world, and she's kind of been forced back into it. But at the same time, she might be drive to try and solve these murders because she wants to make sure there's justice out here, because she feels that she never had justice for what happened to her family. So I mean, that was the gist of the first episode, and it was fine. Like I say, it had some really beautiful shots early on. The location's great. Some of the mystical stuff was very interesting. It wasn't super clear exactly at all times what was going on with it, but I did like the cloaking power and the message that he got to try and fight back. It certainly is more visually it's more intriguing certainly than the present day stuff so far, because Helena's like, cop character who's drinking a lot. Like, I mean, as much as it's different because it's a Colombian show and it's a woman, it's still a pretty cliched kind of character beat, right? Like, how many times have you seen the drunken cop who, deep down has the heart of gold to solve the case because he's driven to, but so there's some elements there that feel just a little bit like we're doing the same old thing. The scenes where the other cops are kind of belittling her and not taking her seriously, is handled well enough, but at the same time, again, we've seen it a reasonable amount of times in other movies and other TV shows, so it's not setting my world on fire, but I certainly wouldn't not recommend it either. I think it's something, if you sound interested in what I've been saying, and like the idea of this, then give it a try. You might like it, and you might want to watch more than I do. And do, by all means, in the comments, let me know if you do watch more, if you like what you watched, and if it improves and gets better over the course of the season. I would be curious to hear it. So it's a mini-series, limited 1-season deal, 8 episodes. It's called Green Frontier, so by all means, go check it out on Netflix. But that is me, so thank you once again for watching or listening. I appreciate it always. Check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/MaileFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month and keep all the reviews and content coming. And you can check out all the reviews we do. As I said earlier, Mindhunter Season 2 launched today as well. Me and Connor will be reviewing that together, and that'll be up sometime late tonight. So you can look forward to Mindhunter. I'm still also reviewing Glow Season 3 on my own. So that's everything on the Netflix feed, but there's also other TV shows we cover on the Almost Cancelled TV podcast feed. Obviously, everything's on YouTube, but check out all this other stuff. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?